thank you for joining us today. It has been an unofficial agriculture day at the Capitol. So we've had inundated. We had the Rural Caucus today that, by the way, just because you're maybe not being farmer represented rural area, if you're on this committee, you're invited to the Rural Caucus. We had some delicious barbecue that you all missed out on because you want to see your friends across the street, just a handful of us, or our good friends at Conservation. So it's great to see a lot of boots in the Capitol. So hopefully folks learned a lot. And I know the legislators, that is, learned a lot. So we're going to kind of continue the theme. It's Conservation Day here in the State House. And it just kind of happened to work out that the sorghum industry and the Kansas Associated Conservation Districts did some joint things together, and happened to work out that we could kind of feature them as well in this committee. So a couple of very important things, what your local conservation districts do, as well as what's going on at the Sorghum Improvement Center that's located at K-State, if you didn't know. So that's going to be our hearing, or really informational hearing today. So we're going to start out with Bill Simshauer. Is that not? I probably messed that up, didn't I? Simshauer. There we go. With the Kansas Association of Conservation Districts. So welcome to committee.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So do we have a clicker? So will this show the slides up on the screen up here? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Bill Simshauer. I'm the current president of the Kansas Association of Conservation Districts. And KACD represents the 105 conservation districts across Kansas. We appreciated the opportunity to host our Conservation Day here at the Capitol, and I hope many of you had the opportunity to check out the exhibits and visit with our Conservation District supervisors and employees and partners today down on the rotunda, and enjoyed our luncheon today. And where do this one?
It would be this one side to side, and we're on the second side.
Okay. The mission statement of KCD and its member districts is providing local leadership to protect and improve Kansas natural resources through collaboration, education, and implementation. So up there on the screen, are we in order? That doesn't look right to me. Are we on the slide number 3?
All right, so we have slide 1, 2, 3.
Okay, now we're right. Each conservation district has a governing board of 5 volunteer supervisors. So there's 525 statewide that provide leadership in addressing natural resource concerns at the local level. Districts also have administrative staff at the local level, and in some counties, technical support positions. You'll have to excuse me on this. On some of these slides, we have that collect, edit deal up there. Don't know where that came from, so we'll just have to live with it. So conservation districts are a subdivision of state government enacted into law in 1937 by the state legislature. The Kansas Department of Ag Division of Conservation administers conservation district law and works hand in hand with conservation districts to deliver a variety of programs to our farmers, ranchers, and homeowners. Each district is a standalone government entity. While districts are a subdivision of state government, their funding sources represent a very unique partnership from the local, state, and federal level. Districts-based funding comes from the county commissioners. State statute allows for a match of county funding up to $25,000, and those funds coming from the state water plan. The federal support comes from the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, the NRCS. NRCS provides funding and technical assistance to farmers and ranchers in all 105 counties through a network of field offices located in 95 counties. In those 95 counties, NRCS provides Conservation District office space, equipment, training, and in return for administrative and technical support in delivering federal programs. Districts are a local delivery system for many state conservation programs at the local level. Many of these programs are depicted on the slide, and so hopefully you can read the slide. But all of these programs play a role in meeting the objectives and goals of the state's water vision. Conservation districts also assist NRCS with delivering federal farm bill programs to our farmers and ranchers. When a farmer or rancher is wanting assistance addressing a natural resource issue on their land, the local USDA Service Center is often their first stop, and the Conservation District Manager is often their first contact. District managers can explain the various programs that are available and direct them to the NRCS or the Conservation District technical staff to help determine an appropriate program and practice to apply to address their concerns. Another benefit to the unique relationship that conservation districts have with NRCS is ready availability to soil conservationists, agronomics, engineers, biologists, range conservationists, etc. And we can provide assistance to our customers. Districts also have more than 40 technical positions obtained through a variety of agreements with state agencies, the NRCS, and our own National Association of Conservation Districts that provide funding for these positions. This staff works side by side with the NRCS technical staff and our partners to provide technical assistance in delivering these state and federal programs. In recent years, KACD has continued to increase our capacity to assist farmers and ranchers by entering into agreements and working with several private companies to add technical assistance and financial assistance to producers across the state. So holding true to our mission statement, districts collaborate with a myriad of local, state, and federal agencies, as well as non-governmental organizations to identify resource issues and priorities, actions, and initiatives. We know that we can achieve much more working together with all these organizations and agencies as we all have a common goal. Conservation districts have a very extensive education and outreach program in many counties, which can play a major role with the information and education goals of the water vision. Districts use newsletters, social media, local radio, and newspapers to inform farmers and ranchers of district and partner-sponsored events that are upcoming, as well as special programs and initiatives. We have that local presence in every county with knowledge of those communities and the ability to coordinate, facilitate, and present. In many cases, district events are multi-organizational efforts, highlighting the importance of collaboration. Whether it be the Water Festival in Garden City or Topeka, Conservation Roundup in Colby, a day on the farm, or a slice of ag in Overland Park, districts reach thousands of elementary and high school students each year. We also sponsor the Envirothon competitions for high school students across the state. Adult education activities include workshops and field days addressing soil health, range management, wetland restoration, irrigation management, and all of these topics addressing the water vision goals and objectives. KACD and conservation districts have a significant number of exhibits and tools available for districts and partners to use at these events. And if you're able to today, down in the rotunda, we had several of these tools. We had the collapsible soil tunnel. We tried to have our virtual sandbox, but it wasn't working today for some reason. But we have stream bank, water erosion trailers, and so we have multiple tools that we can use. The U.S., let's see, let me go here. Well, the USDA Farm Bills gives conservation districts across the nation the responsibility for hosting and chairing a local work group meeting annually. Local partners, along with agricultural producers, owners, and operators, and citizens interested in conservation, are invited to participate in these work group meetings. The role of the local work group is to identify agricultural and natural resource issues on their local communities and provide recommendations on local natural resource priorities. Districts gather this information from the local work groups and provide this information to the NRCS and the State Technical Committee so that they can make decisions in carrying out natural resource conservation programs and activities. The data gathered by local work groups can also be used by state agencies and other organizations to prioritize their program delivery in the state. ks.gov is currently assisting conservation districts across the state with hosting and facilitating these meetings. So as we speak, I know today there's local work groups going on across the state today. And so if any of you are interested in participating in one or more of these local work group meetings, you can find the dates and locations of these meetings on our website. And there's also a virtual option if you'd like to connect by Zoom. And so we have the Zoom link along with the meeting informations. So with that, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and address this committee. And if there are any questions, I'd sure entertain them at this time.
All right, Bill, thanks a lot. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you tell me just a little bit more about the Envirothon? Do they take place in every county, or are they kind of regionally organized?
Well, potentially they could start out on the county level, but then they go regionally and then statewide, and then it even goes on to a national and international level. And so I believe, I don't know if it was a year or two ago, they were actually held in China, wasn't it, Dan? Yeah, and so.
I might jump in on the Envirothon competitions a little bit.
Come to the
Dan
mic.
Meyerhoff,
Come to the mic.
Executive Director of the Kansas Association of Conservation Districts. We do host the Envirothons or competitions in Kansas. For the most part, they are held in the eastern part of the state. There are probably, I'm going to say 20, 30 schools involved in the Envirothon competitions, and we hold 6 different regional competitions around the eastern part of the state in different locations. We've tried to expand to the western part, and we're working with schools out there because we'd like to see the Envirothon competition expand. After the regional competitions, we host a state competition with one school winning and going on to a national competition. Only China went to Canada about 3 or 4 years ago. We actually hosted a national competition here in Kansas probably 7, 8 years ago at Rock Springs.
Thank you, Bill. You saved me from saying singing. See, I knew it. Slinging seeping.
So,
I know it. I know. That's fine. Other questions?
any other questions?
All right. You'll be
If not,
available in case-
again, thank you.
You bet. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. I will get it by the end of the time we meet in March. I do pretty good, 1 out of every 5. I mean, you know. All right. And I know that I think some of the GMT guys got to go. There's a reception, so thank you all for being here in the audience as well. So now we're going to talk about the Sorghum Improvement Center at Kansas State University, and Sarah Sexton Bowser is joining us. And after her presentation, we also have the president of the Kansas Grain Sorghum Association, Kent Winter, is also. So you have a policy question or something that either Sarah doesn't want to answer or. She has, I know she knows all the answers, but if she doesn't, but if there's a policy or a production question that you want a farmer's perspective, Kent is here for that as well. So, Sarah, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Let's broaden it, policy and/or tough questions.
Okay.
I'm open to that. I appreciate the opportunity to come and share the work of the Center for Sorghum Improvement, housed at Kansas State University. As we have a conversation today, I want to make sure I leave you with two items. First, I want you to know and understand the uniqueness of sorghum as a crop and the unique position Kansas has to provide leadership in the sorghum industry. Secondly, I want you to just have a really nice capture of an illustration of what can happen when Kansans come together with partnerships around a problem that's unique to our interests as a state. And I think the Center for Sorghum Improvement provides a really nice encapsulation of that. My name is Sarah Sexton Bowser. I'm Managing Director of the Center for Sorghum Improvement, housed at Kansas State University. There's some key sorghum leaders with us here today. You mentioned our chairman, Kent Winters. We appreciate farmer leadership that guides and informs the work that staff do. And I'll also introduce the staff of Kansas Sorghum. We have Executive Director Jesse McCurry. We have Program Director Maddie Meyer, and representing our future energy as well as opportunities, our intern Adeline Easter. We appreciate each of their contributions to the sorghum industry working on behalf of Kansas Sorghum. As we step back and look at the center and what the center is, it's a partnership program housed at Kansas State University. A few years ago in 2016, farmer leadership said, we have need for technology and improvement in sorghum. We know that there's great research that occurs. We also know that sorghum is a small crop relative to other crops. And so we want to establish a unique capacity to work between the innovators and the academics and those that sell and provide technologies out in the field. And so that's what the Center for Sorghum Improvement works specifically in. There's a board of directors that guide the work. The board of directors are represented by individuals that were founding investors in the program, the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission, the United Sorghum Checkoff Program, Kansas State University. The board is also supported by private industry and other partners that come alongside, but those are the core leaders and the vision setters for the overall program. I promised I'd share a bit about the sorghum story, so let's start off there. I think it's a story that certainly compels me and is relevant to the state of Kansas. I have three pictures here on this slide, and we'll use that to help bring visuals to the story of sorghum. So the first is the production map of where sorghum grows. So you'll see those yellow dots representing county areas, larger dots, meaning larger areas of that county are planted to grain sorghum. Behind that, you'll see a color gradient, and that color gradient represents available water to grow crops in relative to the atmospheric demand for water in those areas. So we grow sorghum where it's pretty tough to grow crops, which means our farmers do a great job of using the crop, and the crop also has some inherent properties that allow it to be adaptive to the types of seasons that we see, specifically in areas that have water limitation. We also need to recognize the leadership that Kansas has and the unique interest in the crop. Kansas, year in, year out, grows about half of the crop for the United States, a significant production region for the crop. Around 3.5 million acres of Kansas croplands are planted to the crop. As we think about sorghum, Kansas is important to sorghum, and sorghum is important to Kansas. But relative to other crops, sorghum is 1/15 the planting area of some of the major crops in the United States. And so it really takes a lot of partnerships and very intentional strategic efforts to bridge that gap to how do we take solutions in this crop and develop tangible technologies. And that's where the work of the Center Improvement, along with other collaborators, come into play to serve meeting those technology needs and a crop that relative to other crops has fewer private industry resources being invested in the crop. In the middle of that slide, you'll see a picture of a spoon. Sorghum is a starch cereal grain, and so the traditional uses of ethanol and livestock and exports are where the crop finds its end uses in markets. Sorghum also has unique properties that align it with high-value end uses as well. Those high-value end uses range from pet food and aquaculture all the way to, in Scott City, Kansas, we have New Life Markets, a leading developer of food technologies in sorghum, really picking apart some of those unique attributes of a grain from a health properties and food application benefit to create some consumer markets in the crop as well. Finally, the last picture here really highlights why the crop makes sense for growers and farmers that grow the crop. Sorghum is a crop that has a number of adaptive traits. You know, when you look at where sorghum developed over the eons, it came from some tough environments, and that's why it can withstand some of the harsh summers that we sometimes have. The crop as a whole has a rich and fibrous root system, making it a great choice for resource-conserving crop rotations that can help build up soil structures and serve those ecosystem services. The crop also has some natural properties to allow it during hot, intense periods to slow down growth and development and go into a dormancy-like stage and hold out, waiting for more favorable conditions, whether it's a cooling off or a rainfall event that allows for a crop to occur even under some stressful conditions. So now that you've heard a little bit about the crop, let's talk about the work of the Center for Sorghum Improvement. The founding investment and start of the work occurred in 2016. With the founders in mind, they put into play a structure where in the first 10 years of the program, there's an annual investments, and that supports the work in my staff time as well as supporting seeding projects and getting partnerships or proof of concepts into place, and then also going and pursuing competitive funding whether that's industry partnerships, competitive funding, whether that's competitive federal grants. And you can see that in the first period of time when we look at the breakout of resources that have been garnered through the leveraging of partnerships and partnership visions, with the overall $5 million total investment, with $3 million being active in the first 10 years of the program. There's been over $6.5 million of competitive funds and resources to leverage the initial seed investment. Let's spend some time talking about the work that those dollars have went to. When we think about the work, there's a broad spectrum from crop improvement, agronomic, as well as end uses style projects. I'm going to share 3 unique projects with you today so you can have a flavor. By no means is this fully detailed or exhaustive of what the center has done, but hopefully it gives you 3 tangible examples of the type of improvement and efforts that have occurred with the center. It's all about the people, though, first. We at K-State have some really great researchers that care about Kansas, care about the land and the people and the needs and the challenges and providing solutions to address those challenges. And so here's just a snapshot of a few of the individuals and researchers I get to work with, as well as the stakeholders on a day-to-day basis. And they're committed to the crop, and they're committed to serving the needs of the state of Kansas. The first, if I clicked at the right thing, that helped. The first project I want to share with you is a project that is quantifying the ecosystem services of the sorghum-centric crop rotation. As we are well aware, there is continued and growing interest in understanding not just what crop production looks like, but also what the environmental and ecosystem outcomes are of cropping production. Specific to that, we often do life cycle analysis. This can be very meaningful for secondary markets. Specifically in Kansas, the marketing of ethanol is contingent on the quantification of how life cycle is quantified for a given crop. Traditionally and historically, when we've thought about N2O emissions for cropping systems, we've always thought 1% of fertilizer application is emitted. And that's been a standard, but there's a discongruency with that. And there's a discongruency specifically to the types of areas where we grow sorghum here in Kansas. To have emissions, you need water. You need water to gas off. You need water to leach through your ground, or water to run off. And so that 1% simply didn't represent what farming looks like here. And so over the past 5 years now, we've been characterizing in Tribune and Colby, Kansas. You'll see, I promise, those are not church roasters that we just stole, and those are gas chambers that we actively put out in crop fields. And every week throughout the crop system, we're coming and taking measurements of those trace gases to quantify what's the emission look like after a rainfall event, after applying a management practice like fertilizer, et cetera. And we've been really excited to find that we are 20% of what's been assumed. This is a real number that has real implications for markets, as well as telling the story of what it's not just tough to grow crops under water limitation, but also there's some environmental benefits too relative to other production areas. So that's one story that I'd like to share with you today. The next is talking about advancing traits in sorghum. Sorghum is a crop that uses native traits, which means that we go out and we mine the natural diversity, and we have to take apart the puzzle of 40,000 different unique genetic accessions of sorghum, identifying the one sorghum that may have a unique water use trait, that may have a unique yield trait, a functional or nutritional trait. And we do that through some really cool work in partnering with geneticists and partnering with practical breeders downstream. To address the lack of technologies in sorghum, at K-State we have a specialized program that works in molecular sorghum breeding. This program is led by Dr. Terry Felderhoff. He started when he was a 4-H'er, when he was 14 years old, working in sorghum breeding programs, so he's committed to the crop by all means. But we're proud to say that his technologies and advancements of traits, starting with sugarcane aphid, tolerance for the crop, and moving into other important traits for farmers, are now a part of developing 50 to 60% of all commercial sorghums that are sold in the United States, as well as more broadly globally. So it's exciting to see that impact occurring. You know, if you think of all the bags of sorghum seed out there, that's certainly a considerable impact, but it's also a development of a pipeline where we can continue to develop and transfer new traits and technologies for sorghum farmers, something that's been long coming. The final project I'll share with you today is a project that's a partnership with the state of Kansas, and that's Drop XL sorghum. This is a project that said sorghum is a water-smart cropping tool. There's some unique properties about how sorghum responds to available water resources as well as stresses that make this crop important to the state. How can we improve upon that? So what we've done is we've gone through and identified sorghums, and we've been working through to identify sorghums that not only are water smart and can sustain underwater stress, but also better allocate water to grain yield. And so you'll see on the top, just to illustrate what this trait does, so on the top is today's sorghum, a non-Drop XL sorghum, and that crop, when it gets really hot and dry, the crop uses water, groundwater, to cool off. And what we've done is we've identified sorghums that are naturally occurring that when it's really hot and dry, the crop will still use water, but uses water at a reduced rate. The crop actually gets a little bit hotter during those periods of time, but ultimately, even though the crop gets hotter during those periods of time, there's available water resources in those more important yield determinant times. So instead of using up all the water bank in the soil early on in the season, and then not having water when it goes to put grain on the crop, we've reallocated and been able to find sorghums that reallocate that water balance in a way that more optimally makes production occur in the state of Kansas. So we're excited about this project. We have the sorghum is off in Mexico. We use counter season so we can get 2 advancements. So this population of sorghums is in Mexico on a beach right now. We're here, but we'll come back and be planted in Kansas environments again to evaluate and confirm those sorghums and start to move into that trait pipeline where it can go into a background and be distributed to a number of technology partners. That's the great component of this type of technology, is it can fit into a number of different sorghum backgrounds and fit for broader dissemination and broader impact. Leadership matters. These are the individuals that serve on the Center for Sorghum Improvement, the board. There's 2 farmers from Kansas, 2 individuals from K-State, and 2 individuals from the Sorghum Checkoff. The program is housed under the College of Ag, and Dean Midden is incredibly supportive of sorghum as a crop and certainly has enabled this partnership to flourish. So thanks for the opportunity to come and share. I stand for questions. The tough ones, though, we remember who gets those, right?
Questions for Sarah? I cannot believe, you're not going to get away. I mean, I've got some, so. Okay, we'll prime the pump, as they say, so. Okay, talk a little bit more about Drop XL. You said it's a state of Kansas effort, so who has ownership of that technology, commercialization plans? What, maybe explain a little bit more of the future and how that works in the whole thing.
Yeah, the core mission of the center is to make sure things aren't just in papers, right? That we have tangible technologies. And so with the background, the Drop XL is really, you see the box there? It's really 3 items. First, in the first study, we said, does this even matter for Kansas? And so we took environmental 30 years of weather data and soil data, and we ran a crop model and said, if we had Drop XL, would we save water? Would we improve yield? Because there are trade-offs, right? If you're using less water, the crop's getting hot, maybe there's a trade-off there. And we found that over the continuum, we'd have a yield improvement of 5 bushels, and we'd use 3/4 of an inch less water in making that crop. So it fits Kansas. The next is, okay, does it exist? That's what that marker is, right? Your GPS marker. Does it exist, and can we find it in the genetics? And that's what we've been doing in the mapping population. We'll be confirming that in this upcoming season. And then finally, there's 40,000 different sorghum accessions. Some of these are wild plants that your farmers don't want to see in their field. So then we do the work of transferring that technology into a standard background that fits the breeding programs of the United States. The lead investigator for this, along with myself, we work with over 13 different breeding programs. And so from a commercialization stance, this would move forward to any and all seed companies, and we'd have a strategic plan that works with Kansas State intellectual property as well as with the stakeholders. But really, this is about impact and getting it out, so we put it into standard backgrounds that can have the maximum ability for broad impact.
So then this would mean it would be labeled as a Drop XL, whatever that seed number is. Is it, I guess, is that the thinking that you would have kind of traditional, or as far as, like I won't say it, but the RRs, but I mean, not necessarily that. I'm going to get into that technology, but I assume that's kind of the branding, so you'll know that you have those certain traits, especially dealing with the water or whatever, to gain more based on less water.
Yeah, Chairman Rogers, let's be clear. You're the marketing expert in this, so I might be calling you. But yes, so this would not be a single hybrid or a single product. It would be, are you a grower? And do you like, this maturity sorghum, this color? I want that with the Drop XL trait. Okay. So it would be a trait that's added into your standard sorghums that you like.
Okay. Other questions? Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. This Drop XL stuff is very exciting to think about. So K-State does the work, the research, the science, and then it goes out to seed dealers. So does K-State get funding? I mean, you can't just give away these great ideas and then have the seed people, capitalize on them. But, they're gonna bring all that out to their producers. So how does K-State get compensated for what they do?
Yeah, thanks, Representative Mosier, for a good question. So first, maybe it's appropriate to share that trait technology for sorghum, up until this program, with the exception of a few small one-off, is really not existent. And so this program has been able to transcend a major barrier to development of technologies. And really how we did that is, first we said, okay, we got to build some trust here. And so we identified sugarcane aphid markers. The industry was under crisis of there was a new insect pest that needed to be addressed immediately. How do we do this? And so we called up seed companies and we say, I know you haven't worked with public folks. I know you don't want to send us your material. So here's what we're going to do. These are genetic markers. We sit down with each seed company and we say, we're going to help you walk through your populations. And then seed companies take tissue samples. So we'll actually set up and say, take tissue samples. We work with a lab called Interdec. They're housed in Sweden. We have the companies ship those samples there, and then we get the results and we say, hey, this works pretty well in your material. And so after that, after we've had this testing and de-risking, sorghum's a small crop, and making investments is a bit riskier in a smaller crop. And so after we've done that de-risking process with any seed company that's willing, we consider most of these traits to be pre-competitive, meaning we'd prefer to see every seed bag or every seed developer offer those technologies. Then we move into a conversation of, hey, we're going to share with this and you need to reinvest in the program. You know, this is a fly mill and you need to renew and rejuvenate. And that's where we've seen partners come in and say, yes, this is exciting and we want to invest back in the program. That's recently been recognized by USDA. And they awarded this effort that started $1 million to run a coordination innovation network for trait technology for grain sorghum. It's exciting. Not only have we been able to transcend a barrier to trait technology, but also we've been able to build a community where we can do it in a way that's high impact, but also dialed in right at understanding what have been the barriers to date to get new technologies in sorghum, and then how can partnerships and doing things at the right level start to build a relationship where companies adopt, more than one company adopts, where everyone suddenly needs to start to be in the game and start to increase their investment in R&D in sorghum. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me a little bit more about this New Life market you were talking about?
You want to think about it?
I think you might be able to share a little bit for us, but thanks for the question. You know, New Life Markets is really a great story of what we like to see in Kansas of individuals that identify unmet market needs and then build innovative, dynamic Kansas companies around that. You know, grain sorghum is a crop when you think about the different impacts it can have. It's a resistant starch, so there's some health properties there. There's cancer research, there's diabetes research, there's all of these cool research realms about the potential health implications of sorghum and the potential benefits. But what New Life Markets did say, we're actually going to start putting products out there. And we're going to put products out that serve a market need, and they're doing just dynamic. They are the leading frontier. They started the horizon, and they're leading the frontier of developing unique applications and processing to serve a market need and to grow, be dynamic in a growing market of ancient grains, non-GMO grains, whatever the market needs, finding a way to create value specifically with that.
I'll tell Earl you're a really good salesman. Thank you.
Representative Schlingen-Siepen. See, I got it.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Question. So as I understand it, sorghum's a grain that originated in Africa. Is that right? So
Yes.
are you guys like crawling all over Ethiopia, Sudan, and Western Africa to somehow try to find all the variants? I mean, is this a global kind of a deal? First question. And second question, are we able to use these technologies to return some of the productivity to Africa, for example, where similarly stressed conditions prevail as in our own state, so that they can benefit from this technology as well?
Yeah, great questions. And before I answer some of your specific questions, it'd be prudent for me to share with you that also housed at K-State in the College of Agriculture is a USAID Innovation Lab. The Innovation Lab is the Sorghum Millet Innovation Lab, and that lab has specific focal for target countries to provide seed technology, end-use technology, and do it in a way where there's partnership with our domestic. So there's a lot of cross-collaboration. More to your specific, hey, how do we work in this global seed from a global resource as well as the global community? And we certainly do. So we have, it's really cool. We've been at the same moment where we started doing trait-enabled molecular breeding in the United States. We also were able to start doing this with some of our partners too internationally in Africa and Senegal specifically. And so seeing these methods have translational impact both for global food security but also domestically to improve our technology is a really great example of how we can have those duality benefits. And then the relationships, because the resource, seed resources evolved over the millennia, we have wonderful gene banks and shared community resources, but it also has a number of personal interactions, collaborations, mentorships that span the globe. And it's fun to be in that intersect.
Other questions? What about forage sorghum? We talk about, food grade and also the traditional, what we know as grain sorghum. So what about forage sorghum? And what you're doing? Are you trying to tackle some of that? Because that seems to, not too long ago, it was back in favor of, as a source of feed for cattle.
So to just make sure we have shared awareness, sorghum has a few different types. There's grain sorghum that I've spent the onerous of our time, but there's also forage sorghum. And so same plant with just a few different plant traits, more biomass, et cetera, that's associated. We also have grazing, so cow-calf individuals will also do hay grazer type forages as well. When we think about the forages, there is sometimes investments are best done when they're led in response to demand. And I spend a fair amount of my time working with feeders, cattle feeders, dairy individuals, talking with those individuals to say, how can we improve the value of forage sorghum? Because certainly there's a need from a production landscape to diversify the types of crops that we have. And then how do we address some of the barriers that we have? So just yesterday, I had a call with 3 large feeders saying, okay, we need to get our handle on some of this, and what are those specific research questions? To date, we haven't had a large research investment into forage sorghums, but we've been doing a lot of the pre-work of saying, from our stakeholders, from those that use the crop, from those that want to use the crop because they're seeing a need in their local production tributary, what are the questions, what are the challenges that need to address to create more value and have this be a practical option for your operation? So that's the work that we've spent most recently in that area.
Other questions? All right, that's pretty easy, Sarah. See?
Thank you. We
Again,
didn't
thanks
get
for
a
being
question
here.
for Kent.
I don't know, any questions for Kent Winter? Boy, he must have put the squeeze on him. Or he did such a good job. So thank you. Any questions on conservation? He is still here as well. So Representative Gardner.
Goodness, we're coming apart here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question about conservation. It seems to me that as our rural communities change, there's going to be some need for change in the way we do business. I know the Extension Service has gone to more of a regional type approach, and I think the Farm Service Agency has also. Do we expect to see anything like that to go on with this soil conservation work? And how good a success are we having at keeping these local committees filled and functioning well?
Right now, I would say the system that we have is working fairly well. Personally, I like to have conservation district in every county. We do a lot of practices, of course, in every district. And so if what you're talking about is maybe consolidating counties and working out, when a producer comes to town, if he has to drive 40, 50 miles away to go to a conservation district office, to the NRCS office, to get plans and stuff to figure out what to do on his land, I'd say that'd be a detriment. And so it's very important for me anyway as a producer to be able to go to my own local community and get the information that I need. And so actually right now it's working fairly well. Your question about supervisors, I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, getting the people on the board. Honestly, that is sometimes can be a problem. I don't know what it is. There may be a lack of interest anymore in a lot of producers getting younger people on board. They don't seem to have the time. You know, they have families. They've got, you know, other things going on. So that can be a problem. And the other problem that we have, of course, is with our district employees. We have a large turnover from our district employees. And part of that reason is we don't get enough funding to pay our district employees compared to other occupations. So when we get a district employee in and they may get an offer from some other entity, a higher wage or better benefits, of course they go to that. And you can't blame them for doing that. And so one of the things we would like to see is to be able to fund conservation districts better, and so that we can pay our employees better. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, last call. Any questions for either one of our presenters? Representative White?
I would like Mr. Winter to come up and introduce himself. I've heard your name, never met you. What's your role and where you live, and tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you. I am a full-time farmer. I farm in northwest Sedgwick County in amongst the towns of Andale, Colwich, and Mount Hope. I'm currently serving as president of the association, the Grain Sorghum Producers Association. And my role is to visit with you folks and help lobby for sorghum. On the association side, we can lobby. On the commission side, that's checkoff money, and that is not allowed to be used for lobbying purposes. So the two groups work together, arm in arm, hand in hand, to promote sorghum in the state of Kansas. And so, again, my role today is to communicate with you folks on what sorghum can do for the state of Kansas. On my farm, it's been raised for the last 64 years. And my dad depended on it as a feed source to finish out lambs along with our farm-raised alfalfa. I cannot get away from raising sorghum. It's all about rotation, rotation, rotation. I can't win very many football games if all 11 players are quarterbacks. But I've got sorghum in my rotation along with my 4 other crops. They complement each other. It checks all the boxes for conservation. We've got this mass of stubble in the field right now that's catching snow, catching moisture, and that provides almost a perfect seed bed for my no-till soybeans next May when I plant them. I can get by with way less money put out per acre. Seed, I'm looking at $8 an acre. I'm using maybe 100 pounds of nitrogen. I'm not having to use phosphate. Herbicides, we got to be careful where we put it. We don't want to put it on a field with a lot of pigweed pressure. But that is where the other crops in rotation are involved to help clean up those situations when they exist. And if I had cattle today, I'd be running cattle on those stalks in the wintertime. It's a second crop for the cattlemen in this state. And so 3.1 million acres of harvested sorghum this last fall. That's down about 9%. The key word there is harvested. Those fields that didn't produce grain, many of them were probably baled, and they're being fed as cattle feed this winter. There's a dire hay shortage in the state as we speak. So it's helped filling a role there too. So I feel blessed to be part of the largest growing sorghum state in the union. We've got this great research going on in Manhattan, partnership with K-State in the able hands of Sarah Sexton Bowser. It's just, to me, it's a win-win situation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Winter. Love your tie, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Sir, you could have stayed home. I think he did it all in about 2 minutes, so. I've never seen Kent so excited before. I guess, no, that was good. Thank you so much. All right. So that'll do it for our informal hearing on that. Again, thank you both for being here. Also want to make it aware, committee, we did send out another report that is a report to the legislature. It's on the multi-year flex accounts. It's from the Division of Water Resources within the Department of Agriculture, so you can check that out. We don't have to approve or anything. It's just something that you're aware of. Now, I do apologize. I misspoke yesterday. So we are having our briefing on the Kansas State Fair tomorrow. Thursday is on the call of the chair, which I believe that means the chair says no meeting. And we're not meeting on Friday either. Friday will be not much going on around the rest of the Capitol. So if you all want to head out, you can probably do that. But anyway, so tomorrow we will have the new head of the Kansas State Fair, and so kind of an update on what is going on with the Bison Arena and other things that they're doing. So that'll be going on. Anything else for the good of the cause? Seeing not, we are adjourned till tomorrow.